sat in the corner of the cell. It's kind of cool. I sat there and I heard moaning at night. It sounded like somebody was in pain. It was the guy in the next cell. And there was a dull red light, and I could look in there, and there was this guy with acromegaly, his distorted face, elephant man disease. So I banged on the prison bars, and they had what they call a trustee. That's a guy that's put in prison for a long time. If he behaves himself, they let him check the outside of the cells. I banged on the cells and I said, that old man belongs in a hospital, not in prison. The guy in the next cell. And the trustee said, he's nothing but a goddamn bum. And I saw no humanity in that. And I said that human beings have feelings and all, but you could be brought up to have no feelings about anyone else but yourself. And I realized then that man was neither good nor bad, depends on where he was brought up. But where I come from, people had feelings. You know what I mean? That is, they worked and they earned money and they had families and they cared. But this guy apparently was so abused as a kid, he had no feelings. So then I began to ask myself, what is a human being? If a human being could be made to kill Frenchmen, Greeks, Germans, what happened to feelings? How can a guy pick up a machine gun or fly an airplane and drop a bomb over a village and kill all those people? Where's the humanity? So I said, maybe people don't have feelings, or they're brought up not to have feelings. Or they're brought up to believe in their country. And then their country says, go kill those other people, they're no good. And each country does that, then all countries are corrupt. So I figured, gee, if all countries are corrupt, how can I design a society that's not corrupt? Only if we produce in abundance and make goods available. These were my experiences. Another time walking over the Brooklyn Bridge. There was a man, apparently was vis-a-vis to me, alcoholic. There was an empty whiskey bottle and he was sleeping on the walkway. And I was about 40 feet away from him behind a structure and I was looking. And a police car pulled up. And they talked to each other. I could just hear a little bit. And they threw him off the bridge. And that locked hard, imprinted in me. And I said, what the hell's the matter with these guys? There's no humanity. They figured if they put him in the car, he might throw up and dirty the car, and he's no good drunk anyway. That's what they talked about. So they threw him off the bridge. And then, of course, after I got out of prison in the morning, they let me out. And I met a young kid about my age, like 13 and a half, and we teamed up and we were going to ride across the country on freight trains. So before that, a guy pulled up in a car and he said, would any of you kids like to make a buck? Well, the kid that I was with says, yeah, I'd like to make a buck. So he said, what do you want me to do? He says, well, I want you to tell my girlfriend I can't see her. Give her this envelope and then I want a reply. So bring it back. I'll give you 50 cents now and 50 cents when you bring the letter back. So the kid says, where's your girlfriend? She's over across the street in that theater. She was the cashier in the theater. And when the kid gave her the note, she screamed. And it wasn't about my girlfriend, I can't see you. It's give this kid all the money you got. We got guns aimed at your head. We'll blow your head off. But the kid didn't know that. Police car came when she screamed. They picked up this kid and put him in jail. Now, this was a good kid, and I was in rags. I could not defend him. I was also hitchhiking. They would have put me in jail then. So here's his first criminal record, and he wasn't a criminal. I began to ask, what is a criminal? How do I know who's a criminal or not? Police picked up people. If you didn't have $20 or $30 in your pocket, you're considered a vagrant. So they put you in jail for 30 days. If you protested, 60 days. Then they leased out the prisoners to chain gangs. There were chain gangs. You know what that is? Men were chained together, and they had to work in the South. And they leased them out to farmers for very little money. They were slaves, in other words. And then I found out But so much corruption in government. I didn't like any government, socialist, communist, fascist, free enterprise, they were all corrupt to me. And then I still worked on a new society. So I worked on the kids around me in New York to try to teach them these things, and I succeeded. So they were all different nationalities, Italians, French, black, Chinese, and they were all interested in science, so we had common ground, you know. And then I realized, gee, if more people knew about this, maybe they can all get along. But if they're brought up by separate nations, told you're Canadian, you're proud of it, you're French, you're proud of it, you're Greek, you're proud, that separated people. But I figured then all people were the same, because my friends were all Americans. And although they were different, slanty-eyed and yellow skin and black, they were all similar in values. It was then that I realized that all people can be the same, can get along real well with it. If their parents didn't say, you're Chinese, you don't play with that Greek boy. You know, the parents mean well, because all they know is their own kind. So they taught their kids to be separate. So when mothers used to see me coming down the street, they'd pull their kids in the house, because they were afraid of what I might do to them. But I never taught their kids to be bad. You know, I just tried to teach them interracial viewpoint without prejudice. Well, prejudice thrived in the South all over. Then I realized, I could see it so obvious that a guy spoke with a Southern accent because he was brought up in the South. A guy would speak like a New Yorker because he was brought up in New York. I don't know if you know, they speak differently than they do in California. So in California, they speak a certain way, and the Arab Americans spoke a certain way, the Italian Americans spoke like other Italian Americans. And all of that, I could see how environment shaped behavior. On 4th of July, the kids would run firecrackers. In another country, they would have a festival, or bullfights. And I can see how all people would want to go to bullfights if they were brought up in that country. People would want to watch Jack Dempsey punching Fresco, some other guy, if they were brought up in America. And I began to see how environment shapes behavior. And psychologists at the time were working on each individual. But the individual is made by society. So if you change society to do away with racism and all that, you don't need psychiatry. And the psychiatrists try to adjust you to this society. So I figured they must be stupid people. They learned something about human behavior, but not the importance of environment. The difference between an Indian, an American Indian, and a Chinese man is the environment they're brought up in. The Indian lives in the wigwam. The Indian shoots a bow and arrow. And so I asked Indians what their concept of heaven was like. They said there's lots of straight arrows and lots of deer, and you didn't have to hunt too long, but there were animals there. Eskimo figured there was a big igloo in heaven and lots of seals, so you didn't starve. And you didn't have to put your grandmother out on the ice when there was a shortage of food. All their heavens were like the times they lived in. Do you know what I mean? I could see it so obvious that environment shapes behavior. If you're brought up by Greeks, you're taught that the Greeks is a great language. If you're brought up by the French, you're taught up that the French were great. It would seem so obvious that people didn't look at individuals as thieves or murderers or nice or evil. They were made that way by living in the slums. If you had 4 brothers and they handed the old clothing down from your older brother to you, and you say, Daddy, when am I going to get a new clothes? He says, I can't afford that, so you have to wear your older brother's clothes, and I have to get him clothes. So when you got a job, boy, you wear a yellow shirt and a blue tie to say, hey, I'm successful. That's why the poor people always dress loud. You know what loud means? Mm-hmm. Flashy clothing. Say, I'm working, you know. And so the blacks wore a yellow tie, a blue shirt, checkered jackets, loud, so you can say, oh, he's working, see? And so they envied things. Then I met some gangsters.